Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this evening we are going to start by calling to order the NRTA meeting, the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority. First up, we have approval of minutes from September 6th, 2023.
Approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Next up, we have the administrator report and operations contract and fleet electrification. I will recognize Gary Roberts, the administrator.
Good evening. Suffering for a little bit of hear loss from a sinus thing, so hopefully you can, if you can't hear me, just let me know. So the operations contract with the operator currently of VTS of Mass is still in effect for an additional year. I opened up negotiations with the contractor to switch the contract into a new contract style. Currently, the contract is it's a operations contract that's based on an hourly rate where they get paid an hourly rate for every hour of revenue service. And from that point, VTS determines the salaries of the employees, and that's how they pay that out. NRTA already takes on all the additional costs of maintenance costs, parts, insurance, liability, the fuel costs. But in my experience and looking at the way this contract's written, it was determined that it would be best to change the contract to a cost plus contract. And basically a cost plus is there's an agreement on a management fee that will be paid monthly to VTS for their services. NRTA still pays the cost of the salaries, any other cost associated with the contract. But we have a tighter oversight of the contract, doing it this way. We can budget better knowing that we're paying them a set rate monthly to do the services. And with the backup provided by the operator, we could better manage actually the flow of funds that are going out and budgetary costs for each year. Currently, the way it comes in now, they have a sum of money that they have and they disperse it. And it's very hard to try to budget the services when you're not sure exactly where the funds are being allocated. It's much tighter for the NRTA to know exactly where the funds are planned to be passed out from. So when it comes to salary and wages and benefits for the employees, we could probably do a better job projecting a year ahead where we're at financially to be able to increase rates and provide better insurance for the employees and negotiate contracts for insurance. Part of the contract that has been determined is NRTA is going to take over the maintenance of the equipment. VTS is, they've done work for 20 plus years maintaining the equipment, but I think looking where we're at and the amount of money that had to be put into the system in March and April to get the system up and running, I think it would be better that we oversee our own maintenance of the equipment, the millions of dollars of equipment owned by the NRTA. It's better to have a better oversight on how things are being done, making sure that preventative maintenance procedures are being followed to the maintenance plan that's in place that we submit to the state. NRTA is being checked by the state. We have an annual audit that comes in to watch over the maintenance of being done. And when we're entrusting an operator to do all the work, it seems better for the NRTA to be able to actually say that we're doing the work and the equipment is being properly maintained. We're bringing in millions of dollars in new equipment over the next few years, and I would rather have the oversight on our end than leaving it to a private company to maintain the equipment. So the new contract that we're negotiating, we've made substantial progress in getting the contract completed. We're hopeful in the next few weeks that'll be completed, but the new contract will only be for the operation of the company for drivers and the fixed route and paratransit services, maintenance, bus stop maintenance, housing, any other thing that they were in charge of outside of operating the buses will be under the control of the NRTA. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Any? Brooke?
I'm curious about housing since you mentioned it. How is that managed now? I mean, is there housing that's under contract?
Currently, there are a few houses that we have now. I was concerned at the way that it's being done, that, you know, it's being submitted in the cost of the housing. There's employee costs to the housing, but we are not realizing the costs that they're paying into it. So, you know, if it's a $7,000 rental, we get a bill for $7,000. But if people are
Yeah,
Matt?
I've met a couple of times with Gary, as have Libby and others, and I think there's a lot more clarity now, sort of doing it this way. And it's not unusual for there to be a cost plus in a management contract the way we're doing it. What we were doing was pretty unusual, my understanding. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Brooke?
Yeah, it feels like there's going to be a lot more transparency.
Yes.
Yeah.
the goal of the contract is to make the funding more transparent. There's 15 RTAs in the state, and NRTA is the only RTA that has an operations contract. All the others are cost plus. It's standard throughout the system to do it. So it seemed like the right choice to switch to this at this time.
And if you're doing an operating, you still have to, there's a lot of oversight to hold somebody to their operating that, you know, so I think we're still going to have oversight, but it's going to be different. You know, it's sort of, the incentives have to be more aligned. And I think this is a step in the right direction to aligning them properly.
Okay, good.
So we're hopeful before the end of the year, maybe we can meet again to present the contract, to have it completed. I mean, the goal is to have it started for January 1st. We're down to one step in the process. Most of the fee payment schedules are figured out. It's just we have a major part of it is the management fee and how it's going to be paid out, whether or not the general manager's fee will be included in the cost or if it will be separate. So that we're down to that point, and I think that in the next couple of weeks we should be able to come to a fair conclusion for both sides.
So we should probably schedule that for the 20th.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the meeting schedules to figure out when
There's only 2 left.
holidays. might throw that off, but
Okay.
I'll have a better idea by next week
Okay.
where we are at on that.
Great.
The next part of the administrative report, I wanted to update everyone on fleet electrification. I stated from the start that my goal was to electrify the fleet, or a major portion of the fleet, as we replace equipment. As we talked about over the previous meetings, the equipment is at the end of their life. Everything needs to be replaced. And, there was no funding really in place to do it. The first step that has to go through the MPO meeting on December 18th was we transferred funding from Farebox replacement cost of $600,000. And we pulled that line item and we put that towards the purchase of the first 2 electric vehicles. The state approved it. The final step is for the MPO to vote on it, to approve the capital change in the STIP. And once that is done, we should be moving along very quickly with the first 2 vehicles to be here. The possibility of the first 2 vehicles could be in January, that they would be here. I've had conversations with the manufacturer to set them aside. They understand the processes that we have to go through for funding approvals. And, we're right on time with everything that we had planned on. Originally, the first 2 vehicles would come with chargers as part of the purchase for the 2 vehicles. And after having further discussions with Mass DOT, they had looked around for some additional funding for NRTA. They know the needs that are here. So Mass DEP had a program in place for the purchase of smaller electric vehicles, and they have approved the purchase of 3 additional vehicles. That again has to go through the MPO, so it may not make it to the next meeting. It'll go to the next following month. But that's a step in the right direction. Just think that we could have 5 new electric vehicles here before the season starts. We'll have time in the shoulder season to test them, work on infrastructure cost to bring the electricity that we need into the facilities for charging. I had worked with Remain Nantucket. They graciously granted the purchase of a level 3 charger, which has been purchased. It's actually already been delivered. It'll be the first level 3 charger on the island. It's a high-powered charger that could charge 1 bus within 1 hour, where the current chargers on the island would take 8 hours to charge a vehicle. We are looking at the infrastructure and planning for installation at the Greenhound facility, which will allow the buses to be charged on their runs as they come in. It might be every 3 runs. They may need a 10-15-minute break to boost the charge to the vehicle. That'll allow the buses to run the entire day. There'll be no stoppage in the routes because of, the buses ran out of state of charge. So the plan that I put in place will be to start on like Mid-Island and Maya Comet, to replace all the vehicles with electric vehicles or smaller vehicles. The downside to it is the seating capacity of the vehicles is slightly less than the current vehicles, but with standees in the vehicle, being in a low floor bus, a larger door, there's more room for standees. The planning is in place to increase service on the routes, to cut down the wait time. Instead of 20 minutes per run on one route, we're planning on doing 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, the bus will leave. And on the other route, we're looking to change that down to 15 minutes per run. That'll compensate for the capacity issues. That worst case, if the bus is full, you're only going to have to wait 10 minutes. There's another bus coming along. The new tracking system that we're installing in the vehicles tracks vehicle capacity. So on your phone app, passengers will be able to look to see if the bus is full or not full to better plan their trip. We added 4 smaller vehicles for winter service that are in service now. Those will be rolled into the summer fleet as well. So we're looking at 9 new vehicles to start service that'll be in service for the summer season. I continue to look for additional funding. I actually put in a request with Mass DOT for an additional $1 million in funding for buses. If RTA cap can, handle the additional expense. I've also put in for additional requesting for housing to help. One of the things the state is big on right now is providing housing for people that need housing. We need housing for drivers or we can't provide service. The island is very difficult to find housing for drivers. We're paying substantial cost for house rentals. So we have requested that capital money be allowed to cover the costs. And we've, put in a request for additional capital money for lease expense, in addition to starting the process to look at buying housing that the NRTA will own to guarantee that we have proper housing to bring in summer help. And I hope those are steps that'll, steps that'll help move things along to guarantee that we have enough drivers. We're going to have to add additional drivers for the additional service. If the funding comes in the way we're looking at adding some additional services throughout the island, which I'll present in the budget that we're going to move on to next. So we're hopeful that we will hear approval shortly on that.
Make just quick comment. I've had a couple positive comments from people on Dover and York saying the buses that are running now are thousands of times quieter and they're very happy already. And one question, 9 buses, what % of your fleet is that?
We would probably look at replacing 50% of the fleet.
So you've got
in this time period here.
Yeah. So within a year and a half of the fleet is replaced, and you're trying to get the rest over the next couple of years.
We're working on. I mean, the low-no grant. We have some legs on that. There's $4 million in funding that we have available. We found a new source. They wouldn't do electric, but we found something that the state has approved, and it's moved on to the FTA that could, that would possibly buy another 6 buses. The lead time to order those buses would probably push it out a year to do it. But I'm hopeful I've been here just about a year, and I'm hopeful within 2 to 2.5 years, the entire fleet's going to be replaced. So we're moving in the right direction. Funding is starting to line up. It's just there's a step to everything. And sometimes the low-no grant is going to take longer than these other projects that we're working on.
Yeah, but that was the low-no grant that was originally for propane.
That was for the propane that no one bid on.
Yep.
We tried to switch it to electric. FTA would not allow that. We made several attempts to do that. We moved on to diesel electric hybrids, and they would that just wouldn't work. So we've looked at biodiesel, which is 80% diesel, 20% bio. They are very clean. They're very clean. They're as clean as a CNG bus, basically. They have stated that they will accept that. Those are a larger bus. Those buses would do the airport, Sconset Run, Surfside. They have to have a wider road. They wouldn't be able to operate in town. They're in the range of $600,000 per bus. So out of the, the 4 million, we're hoping, we can get 6 to 7 buses out of that process.
And noise level?
Sorry.
Noise level?
They would be there. They would still be a rear engine diesel bus. They would be far quieter. The buses that we operate now are probably the loudest diesel engine that's in operation. The international engine is extremely loud. These engines are pretty quiet, and they would be a 30-foot bus. They would seat, 25 to 30 people. The airport bus, we could put luggage racks inside for luggage. They could be designed for those routes. They would be low floor with the entrance and exit door to get the people in and out very quickly. And they would be a marked improvement from the buses that we have now. There'd be no steps. They would have a ramp for the wheelchair accessibility. We're hopeful that answer is going to come in shortly, that they accept the bid that we're putting out there.
Thank you.
Gary, how's the availability of actually obtaining the electric buses out in the marketplace?
So the electric bus that we chose is a smaller, E-Jest is the name of the bus. Currently, because we're using state funding to purchase the vehicles, they do not need to meet Buy America requirements because it's state funding, no federal money is being used. So I believe that we could get buses within a 3-month time period on any purchase. The diesel powered buses or full-size buses are about 24 months from the time of an order. So we're, the ones that we've chose are fairly quickly available. Martha's Vineyard has 3 in their fleet. We have a contract to buy up to 15 off of a contract that we currently have now. The pricing is not the $293,000, including the charger for the vehicle. They're a 10-year bus. The current vehicles we have now are 7-year vehicles. And, we're well past the 7 years on most of the fleet. So to get the first 2 in here will be the test to see how they do. And we'll learn on how to set up the routes, and then we'll get the additional 3 if funding goes correctly. And then we'll plan from there that if we can get funding, we'll, I search constantly for funding to buy buses. And if I can get additional funding, I would order another 3 right away, and we would see them before the summer as well. So we're going to continue to keep searching. There's an innovation grant that's out there currently for different types of services. We're putting in an application for that, for the microtransit, and for some other services that we're looking to add. And we're hopeful to get an answer on that this fiscal year to be able to add more funding, to add more services as well. If there aren't any other questions on that, I'll move on to the amended budget.
Okay, go ahead.
So when I came in here earlier to get our original FY24 budget, the state was still searching or figuring out what the state contract assistance would be. We put in a number at 700,000. It came back at 569,000. We met the previous meeting to discuss the Fair Share Funding Act that the state had put out, which did allow the state to grant an additional large amount of money to all the regional transit authorities. It was done through equity, where they wanted everyone to have the ability to provide night service and Sunday service. A lot of the transit authorities provide no service on Sunday. Some of them end at 5 o'clock. We're lucky here that we're already operating 7 days a week. We operate during the summer months until 1 o'clock in the morning. Our downfall was that we really had no money to do the things that needed to be done outside of running the buses. Bus stops, bus stop maintenance, housing costs, staffing costs. Everything was done, the budget had to be very, very tight to accomplish what needed to be done. After we had several meetings and discussed every transit authority, everyone agreed that Nantucket was well underfunded, along with two other RTAs. The final outcome was that we received an additional 2 million or 2.185 million in operating funding. We have already received the first share of it last week. That they're paying out half the funding now, and the other half will be paid out in February. To do the budget over is a little difficult because we're already 6 months into the year. The state has talked about allowing a rollover on the first year for funding that isn't spent, because it's very hard to program that much additional money and get it spent in a proper way. I mean, you can spend the money, but it wouldn't be proper expense to do it. So I revised the budget that I have sent to everyone to include the money. Some of the things that you may notice in our revenue portion, the originally approved FY24 budget was $992,400 for federal funds and CARES Act funding. I've dropped the amount down. Some federal money can be rolled over into the next year. There was no reason to draw that much money if it wasn't needed at this time for operating costs. It allows it to roll over to future years when we may need the money to cover expenses. So that is the drop that you see in our actual revenues. The expense side of it, there are drastic changes to certain line items. I met with Matt and Malcolm, the finance committee, to go over most of the changes. To explain the salary and wages cost change was to cover the bringing maintenance staff on board. Their fringe benefit costs have to be rolled in. Post-employment benefits change because of adding people to the staff. Adding a new position to the staff to oversee the maintenance and oversee our facilities raises the salary and wages and and those costs as well. Outside services had a large increase. That is due to the fact that I want to do more with our bus stops. We may look at going outside with RFPs for maintenance on bus stops to see that they are in the proper conditions that they should be in. Currently, the way it's done is through the operator, that they send someone out to take care of them. I would prefer to have professional services handle these places to make sure that, if benches need to be replaced, if things need to be leveled, cutting the grass, we're looking at adding some very low watt solar lighting to some of the major bus stops. Some of the bus stops are very dark. It's very hard for the drivers to actually see that there's someone standing there. So we may go with a very low solar powered light just to illuminate the poles so that they know that there's a bus stop there. Insurance costs, we were covered at our original budget cost. Adding this many new vehicles in a short amount of time does raise the insurance slightly. So we raised some money on the insurance, and the lease cost has raised significantly because we're going to add that onto NRTA's cost instead of the through the operations purchase transportation costs. You may wonder, if we're doing the contract over and we're taking on a lot of the costs from the operator, why purchase transportation costs have increased. That is due to the plans for additional services. It will not affect the local assistance because the town is well inside the percentage of local assistance. The main thing that we're working on right now is a shuttle that we want to reinstitute the shuttle from the park and ride lot for the boats. So we put money in there for that to cover the cost to have a nonstop shuttle from the parking lot to the boats, to be able to get the workers and try to get people to start using lots outside of the town. If they have the ability to catch a bus every 10 minutes, they may say, I'm not going to drive into town. We'll park on an outlying lot and bring the buses in. We're still looking at on-demand services and microtransit services. Part of the innovation grant that we're doing is to cover some of that, but there is money put into the budget to start the process to add these services as well. Those were the major changes were due to the contract changes. Fuels had a slight increase. Fuel costs are up. We're running more gas-powered vehicles. We're paying, $5 a gallon at the pump to cover the cost. But I think everything is aligned in there. We spread the money out. We added some money to legal expenses because we envisioned some things that may be coming up that we're going to have some legal coverage on. And the only other major change is on parts and tires. The way the NRTA had done things in the past was they capitalized their costs for preventative maintenance. You were capped at 85,000 to try to maintain the fleet using capital costs, which was nowhere. We spent 350,000 in March and April last year. So I've added more money to cost to try not to draw money from capital, leave capital monies for capital purchases instead of just using it to cover the cost of parts and maintenance. So I don't know if you had any other questions on the budget.
Any questions? No.
None. So I'll just need to approval. The board will just need to approve the budget amended, and then I can submit that to the state and
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
for
Gary.
going through all the changes. And
the next item on the agenda was a staffing update. NRTA is going to be adding a new position. The title is Operations and Facilities Manager. The position will assist me in a lot of parts of my job. The main purpose of the position is to oversee maintenance, as well as manage all of NRTA's facilities. Currently, it falls upon me to make sure that if anything that has to be done at the Greenhound bus station, any of the stops or the maintenance facility, we're going to be adding the housing, the houses that are being rented. This person is going to oversee the rentals, handling the employee contracts for housing, the maintenance costs for upkeep of the properties, and oversee the changes that we want to make with bus stop maintenance, improvements at the Greenhound and at the maintenance facility as we move forward with the transition with electric buses. The other staffing update would be bringing the current mechanics that work for the operator. They will transition to NRTA. Those were in the budget. Bringing them on board will be a big step to providing the proper maintenance and adherence to the plan that I've rewritten the maintenance plan. The current maintenance plan will go away and a new plan is in place, and they are being brought up to speed on the new maintenance plan. The operations and facilities manager will monitor adherence to the plan, and having them as our employees makes it much easier to watch and make sure things are being done at the way that we want them done going forward. Okay. I've attached the job description to that part. And the final thing on the agenda tonight we met with Matt and Malcolm with the finance committee to talk about the executive compensation for the administrator. The way it works, for anyone that's not aware, is, I can give raises to my staff, but for the administrator, that has to be done by the board. I presented comps for the other administrative positions. There's 15 of us in the state that run all the transit authorities. This position, when I accepted the position to come on, I understood that I'm coming in new. I have 35 plus years experience, but it was still a new position for me coming in. I came in and made a lot of changes that had to be done. We set a path that we want NRTA to head toward. Do this. So we met, we discussed it and presented comps. Out of 15 RTAs, I will say the cost of living on Nantucket is higher than any other RTA in the state. So Matt and I had a discussion, so we were, about where things were on that.
Yeah. And Libby, I spoke to Libby earlier today. Do you have an update on that, Libby? Do you want to make a recommendation or?
Well, I have not had a chance to talk to Gary about this, but what I was talking with Matt about is that we did a comp and class study for the non-unions earlier this year. And I think what we can do is slot the NRTA administrator into that schedule. And we can certainly review that with you tomorrow. And it would be on par with, I don't have it right in front of me right now because we were working on it late today, but on par with other town department head level positions with similar levels of responsibility. So I can review that with you tomorrow, but maybe, I don't know if we maybe come back with a number that would then be retroactive to a certain date and pending making sure that the budget can take it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, the goal was to make sure that it was comparable to what we've been doing elsewhere. I think you'll find you'll be pleased and it will be fine. But we wanted to make sure that we were doing that part of it properly. So, and I will say you have hit the ground running and have just the fundraising alone on the buses, et cetera, has been phenomenal. And I think the direction is phenomenal. So I think we are in good hands. So.
Thank you.
Maybe we can get a more detailed recommendation and vote on that with a retroactive date when we
In 2
approve the
weeks. Yeah, 3
contract.
weeks, yeah. It
Most-
won't take long.
Shoot for that meeting at the 20th.
Okay.
Oh, and just one note, can you print the agendas next time? So we have printed copies.
Yeah, I did. I probably, I sent it to Maureen to send out, but I don't know.
We got it in an email. It's not, two things. It should be uploaded, posted, where we get our select board packets and printed hard copies for the meeting.
Okay,
That's
we will do that.
that's not major. Just one thing to note.
Not a problem. And I forgot to put in there public comment if there's.
Oh, yeah. Are there any public comments related to NRTA before we adjourn this section of the meeting? Okay,
move to
seeing
adjourn.
none. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thanks,
We'll see you
guys.
in 2 weeks.
Night.
Then we'll move on to the select board agenda at 6:09. Let's see. I think we have at least one additional announcement to add to the agenda. And on the public hearing, we've been asked for another continuance to the 20th. Is that correct? So we won't be hearing that tonight. We'll be continuing it. Other than that, I believe we're doing it under announcements.
I thought you were going to do it under select board reports. in comments, but it doesn't matter.
Good to see you're all on the same page.
Okay.
It came up really late.
Well, since it's not on the agenda, why don't we just go with it being new business? It's going to be about the pending steamship legislation. So I'll move to announcements.
Thank
which
you.
they're really-
This meeting is being video and audio recorded, and I did want to make a little additional announcement. I want to introduce our newly hired housing director, Christy Ferrantella, who is here. She will start in the job full-time in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, she's been working with current director Tucker Holland and town administration to start getting up to speed. We have a bit of a transition period that will overlap a little with Christy and Tucker, and I think she was introduced to Affordable Housing Trust yesterday. And we issued a press release, I think yesterday or today. And we're really happy to have her on board, and she's got her work cut out for her. So welcome, Christy.
Welcome, Christy.
Great.
Welcome back to the room.
Are there any opening select board announcements or comments? Okay, there's no follow-up from prior select board meetings. Are there any public comments this evening for items not otherwise on our agenda? Seeing none. New business, there is some legislation pending from the steamship that I believe that we have some concerns about, so we'll be looking to address that.
So just a really quick intro. It came up late yesterday or sometime during yesterday. I think you all got some press inquiry from about it. And it was news to us what this is all about. I think Mr. Dixon may have had a little bit of conversation today with State Representative Fernandez, but it seems to involve a potential change in the voting structure of the authority, which could be potentially very negative for Nantucket. And when this is not the first time something like this has arisen. And I think the board and the community have been very strongly opposed to any such change. So I was able to be in contact a little bit with the Dukes County Administrator late today, and they were able to vote at their meeting to authorize the sending of a joint letter with the Vineyard and Nantucket. So I would ask that you authorize me to work with her and the chair to come up with a letter of opposition to the legislation and just get it out. It seems that there already was a hearing on it, and that there's written testimony being accepted, we think, until December 12th.
Yeah, if that's agreeable to the board.
Absolutely. So moved.
Right.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I don't know, you didn't have any other additional comments. Okay, thanks, Tom. Treasury warrants first.
A move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Under pending contracts, we're just going to take one separately because two of our members are going to recuse on the grant agreement with the Interfaith Council. So if there aren't any concerns or questions on the other items, I could take a motion on this side of the table. There a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously, 3-0. Or am
We did it.
I just
opposite.
did that completely backwards.
Vote and it's 5-0, and then we can vote on the other.
Aye.
Okay, that's carries unanimously 5-0. On the Interfaith Council, we have the two recusals. That's where I need to go to only this side of the
Move
table.
approval, interfaith.
Brooke and Tom.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 3-0. And just a note that that we've obviously seen an uptick in our homeless population on the island, and this is a really great service that's going to be provided for the community, and I'm glad that the town was able to participate. Consent items, gift acceptances, planning and land use services, human services, Saltmarsh Senior Center, Natural Resources Department. Do you want to read them, Brooke?
Yeah, I just gotta, give me 2 secs.
Okay.
Wasn't quite ready. No, I got it now. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so the gift acceptances are to the Plus Department, a gift of $8,000 from Doherty Ack LLC for Mariner Way subdivision for pedestrian and bike path in the area. To the Department of Human Services, a gift of $130 from Marshall and Deborah Beal for the Saltmarsh Senior Center. A gift of $150 from the Clara Foundation for Saltmarsh Senior Center. And to the Natural Resources Department, a gift of $39,420 from the Great Harbor Yacht Club Foundation for the purchase of an algae bioreactor for the Brant Point Shellfish Hatchery. So I would move that we accept all gifts for their designated purposes with letters of thanks to be sent to the donors.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. The public hearing, we were just going to take a motion to continue this to December 20th. Oh, sorry. Just all over the place tonight. Request for re-execution of documents with GG Development LLC previously approved March 3rd, 2021. A, acceptance of roadway improvements on Mill Hill Court pursuant to December 17th, 2014 license and planning board subdivision approval. B, acceptance of third amendment to Woodland Hill subdivision declaration of protective covenants, easements, and restrictions and non-exclusive pedestrian, bike, and vehicular easement as set forth therein. And C, acceptance of first amendment to Woodland Hill subdivision grant of right of enforcement restrictions.
Do you want me to just quickly? So
Sure.
the select board approved all of this on at their March 3rd, 2021 meeting. The documents were never recorded, so they've gone stale. So this is just basically reaffirming the original motions. Town council has reviewed the updated documents and they're in fine form and ready to be.
Does anybody have any questions on these?
I'll move approval.
Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. Now, on the public hearing, we just need to take a motion to continue that to December 20th. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Then on to town manager's report for continued discussion of town meeting warrant.
Okay, so I updated the outline that's been in your packet and I tried to highlight the items that are either I wanted to give you a little bit of updates on, or I still need some direction on, and if not tonight, in the future. So the sorry, I think I have the wrong outline here. Well, I'll have to look at it on the screen. I'll just look at it on the screen. So the e-bikes and the e-scooters. Last week we had a bit of discussion about this. And as a result of that meeting, BPAC, Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, is supposed to continue working on recommendations to regulate e-bikes. So that's just FYI. The noise bylaw, as a result of your discussion last week, I just let the organizations that have been asking know that in the future, if they have specific recommendations about the noise bylaw, days, hours, times a year, whatever, those should be made specifically, and that those such initiatives need support and momentum. And I think they understand that and will probably be talking amongst themselves about it.
And a follow up on that, Libby, we
Yep.
did all get an email today. I think it went to you and back and forth, where I think they are going to try to build momentum for a few key areas and for a shorter season. They took some of the advice that they've heard over the last couple of years. So I think we will see it, but probably not this year. And I think the goal will be to build some momentum. So things that are happening now as common practice, as neighborliness, but occasionally doesn't, will happen more likely to happen. So we'll see.
Okay. Rental car bylaw changes. so we have requested the town council work on this, and I think actually we've got a couple of little updates from town council Brian Riley tonight. One is in response to ongoing concerns from some of the rental car agencies, which are represented by council as to the enforcement of the current bylaw. And the other is what, if anything, can we do about the current bylaw? So I would turn to Brian Riley to go over those items.
Go ahead, Brian.
All right, thank you. Good evening. So I just sent an opinion kind of late morning, so I know people haven't had a chance to really dive into it perhaps. But one thing is I did look at the current bylaw, and my understanding anyway is that after the last time we talked about this, Chief of Police did contact some of the actual businesses that were renting vehicles without the appropriate town license. And that those, I think there might have been 4 or 5 of them, those did stop doing that. So assuming that's still the case, at least in terms of the complaint we got from the licensed car rental agencies through their counsel, that kind of leaves Turo or any similar peer-to-peer car rental companies out there, and people who live on the island who have an account through Turo in order to try to make their car available for someone to come rent it for a day, for a week, what have you. In terms of if we just wanted to propose something for the bylaw that would address that and discourage it or make it clearer that that's not supposed to be happening, I suggested adding a sentence to the definition of rental or lease, which now says the definition it has a definition for what rental or lease is, and then perhaps adding this definition shall apply to rental agencies and commercial entities, as well as a personal motor vehicle rented or leased through a peer-to-peer or car sharing business or platform. I did try to find something through the Attorney General's office, the division that has to approve all bylaws before they can become effective, to see if there was any other ones on car rental on this sort of issue. I did not find any, which would have been useful, but I did not find any. One issue which I raised in my opinion today, which I didn't realize until just recently, in the car rental bylaw itself, chapter 58, it states at the top when it's requires a license for any rental agency or person engaged in the business of renting vehicles. And then there is a reference to a special act of the General Court from 1989. And apparently this chapter 58 was originally adopted at the annual meeting in 1988. And what the special act says, let me just get it in front of me again. Let's see. So this apparently was requested the usual way through a vote by town meeting and then the select board asking it. This special act from 89 says the town of Nantucket is hereby authorized to enact bylaws requiring the annual licensing of motor vehicle rental agencies. Refers to a fee for the license. And then it says the action of the town of Nantucket on Article 109 of the warrant for the 1988 annual town meeting is hereby validated, ratified, and confirmed in all respects as though Section 1 of this act had been in full force and effect at the time. So what that tells me, without knowing this for sure, but it certainly seems as though town meeting submitted that car rental bylaw to the AG's office in 1988. Apparently was told this can't take effect without a special act. And so it appears the town filed a special act, and that was granted, authorizing the town to have a car rental agency bylaw and a license for such agencies. So The question I have on that, and I'm hoping maybe somewhere in town hall, there's some records of what happened in 88 and 89 in that regard. But it does give me pause about one, trying to apply this to Turo itself, but perhaps even more so to an individual who may be using Turo, have an account with Turo to make their car available for a patron on the other side to rent. But does that make that individual a car rental agency? I mean, I have my doubts on that, and I real doubts about whether, if the town tried to enforce it against these individuals that have accounts on Turo, that we started giving them tickets or that sort of thing, or trying to get some sort of cease and desist. I don't have a lot of confidence right now that a court would agree that that people aren't allowed to use Turo, even though the town has this bylaw. I might be wrong. You never know what's going to happen in court. But I'm not sure that people in that status will be held to be a rental agency. We did some research, and not much case law out there involving Turo, but I cited one from San Francisco, California, which also involved actually the international airport there. There's a Massachusetts case involving Massport and Logan Airport, but the issue was really the airport didn't like the fact that people were dropping their cars off and having them picked up, with no agreement where they would allow that to happen on their property. And the San Francisco one was similar, but the court did address whether Turo was a, quote, rental car company, and it said, based on California law, it was not. Now, Massachusetts law is different from California, of course, but whether it's the town or even the state was to try to enforce and call Turo a car rental agency, that they would at least be able to point to that case. And then the last issue I raised about it is, as I say, I have doubts about enforcement. In terms of Turo itself, we could send a letter to Turo and ask them, we tell them we think that this whole operation is in violation of the bylaw, and please stop doing it. My guess is that for a relatively small town in Massachusetts, Turo's not going to pay much attention to that. And the chief of police, again, at our last meeting, had expressed real concerns about trying to track down people who have these accounts, and it was well over 100, I believe, and try to either cite them or tell them they're not allowed to do what they're doing. My opinion would be that you can't really give somebody a ticket just because they have an account with Turo. You'd have to somehow prove that they were actually renting their car to someone and have something to document that. And of course, the chief's even bigger concern was we don't have the staff to attempt that on this issue. We're just too busy with more concrete things. So in summary, I did propose something which would make it clearer that people using something like Turo, that we would consider them subject to Chapter 58. But in terms of actually making that stick, or even possibly having the Attorney General approve that, I'm just not sure at this point. And I don't quite know, particularly with the police department staffing concern, I'm not quite sure how to step up, or attempt to enforce here. I think the chief did have success with the businesses that were actually advertising online for renting cars without a license. It appears that they stopped, but this issue with these peer-to-peer companies is kind of a whole different animal. Obviously, back in 1988, when this was adopted, no one was thinking about that.
Yeah,
Matt?
we have, thank you. We have policy implications, policy discussions on this, whether it's hard for the police department or not, whether the state would do one thing or California does another, et cetera. Though, we need to talk about that and go through that. But I think the, sort of, I wouldn't want to, I think we should attempt to do what like town council is suggesting and tighten our regulations so that they are considered, bound by 58. That was clearly in the intent of that article, because I was around when we were doing it. We clearly made it 700. And we did, we kept it at 700 because that was kind of close where it was then. And what people were afraid of was an increase in the number of vehicles to 1,000 or 2,000 or 4,000. And, and it has been successful. It has not allowed that to happen. We do have, what is it, Article G that we're going to talk about later in our it's talking about making it 1,000, maybe that's a discussion we have and increasing the number slightly. But I think they were saying it's half of 1%, and it may be, that's probably true, but it's also used at a higher rate. If someone has a car in their, at their house, it isn't, when you rent a Jeep for $500, $700 for the day, you've got a sticker on it. You're going everywhere that day. You're not, it's not sitting in the driveway, whereas a lot of the cars that are here are not. And so you have to look at the usage. We took that, those are the discussions that we had and analysis that we did back then. So that policy at the time was also was to protect islanders, because we struggle to get our cars on and off the boat. And what was happening, what does happen still sometimes, but would be a lot worse, is if there were all the slots were full with cars coming over and back, we would never get our kids off for school and other things. And so those are all things. It isn't just how many are here on island, it's what's the access on the ferries. That's a limited resource. And so there were a bunch of different issues that came into this when we were talking about this, back in the day. I don't think anyone assumed that you would quote, that sharing, back then, that you would share your car. No one assumed that. But it's sort of like sandwich sharing. If I just start sharing sandwiches out of my house, I'm still a sandwich shop. And that's the analysis that they used in the Styler decision. They actually talked about another one in New Hampshire. They talked about sandwich shop, sort of saying, in regards to short-term rentals. And so, a sandwich sharing is a sandwich shop. Car sharing is a car shop. It's a rental car shop. And so I think that just because you want to call it something different, it doesn't make it something different. Now, if we want to make a policy decision to change that and do the work and figure that out, then we can have that conversation. But I think that our first step would make sure that our laws as written are applicable and enforceable. And I think, and I would argue that they are fairly enforceable as stands now. I would feel comfortable, sort of going to bat on them as they stand, let alone, if we change them, we can strengthen them substantially. So that's my quote unquote 2 cents on it.
Brock? I always want to think about a regulation. This is going to come up with e-bikes too, right? It's kind of the same argument. You can create regulations. Some people will comply because the regulation exists, and some people won't because they don't know it exists, they aren't aware, or they are intentionally don't want to comply. So there's an argument for creating a limit and seeing how it goes in terms of voluntary compliance. And then there's what happens to those who aren't complying, and do we have the resources to find them and enforce. Matt, your point about ferry capacity is interesting to me, because a car sharing program, theoretically, I have a spare car and I'm renting it out periodically. I live here, my car's here. I don't need a ferry reservation, as opposed to if we overlimit the number of cars available for visitors that are already on island, then we're actually increasing pressure on the ferries, not decreasing. So just don't have an answer for this, just noodling it around in my head.
Yeah, I don't think it would work that way. I think what's happened when you look at the increase in vehicles to the island. What happens is they come over and they net out at, 2 point something a house over time, and they don't leave. So a car gets here and it's in one driveway, and then it's sold to the second and third person, and it doesn't ever leave the island, even when it's upgraded. And so it's our total number is more a result of just volume of, how many houses we have, how many people are living here now, but it's substantial. And then the over and back is an issue of a volume at those periods of times. And what traditionally happens is the rental car companies are bringing them over as late as they can in the spring when they can still get them on, and they're bringing them back as quickly as they can in the fall when they can get them on. And that's the same time that a lot of island families, especially in the fall, are trying to get their kids off the island. And so that's, I've had a lot of complaints this summer, where, in the shoulders with people unable to get on the boat. And why is it everybody else? How come we don't get why don't we get what we used to be able to have? And I always say, well, it's because we have twice as many of us now, and we've done this to ourselves, but it would add more. If we had 4,000 rental cars, it's going to be worse. So
People do rent cars and bring them over on the ferry.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper than the rental cars here.
So, I have a thought. It's a little bit like making exceptions for year-round residents for short-term rentals, but I would ask town council, can we create a class of license for car sharing that's separate? That has, I don't know, a requirement that the car be registered to a Nantucket address, for instance, instead of increasing the number of licenses overall and the risk that those would go to rental car agencies that are doing this back and forth with vehicles seasonally. I don't know, something creative in that way. So we provide some opportunity to those on Nantucket who are using the Turo model as a way to afford to live here with their vehicle to increase their income.
Certainly have to think that through, because I could bring 10 cars and register them by address.
And that's what's happening with
And
some of these cases.
that's what I know of people who do that. So it's a good idea, but the details have to be worked through.
Yeah.
To be continued.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think-
Noah
Madam Chair.
Carberg.
Noah Carberg, Airport Manager. I don't want to take away from the select board's discussion, but I do have a 5-minute update from the airport if you'd like to hear it. If not, that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Some updates on numbers from April through October. Rental car gross revenue produced at the airport was down nearly $800,000 on the basis of 7,000 fewer rental days, which is a 17% drop. It's reflective of losses that I believe will escalate further through the fall and winter, probably stabilizing at 15% reduction in revenue to our 3 incumbents on the basis of around 20% reduction in calendar days. In the September meeting, I estimated that airport, Turo, and Turo-like activity would take up about 9,000 contract rental days. That figure is still accurate after reviewing trends through the summer. We have the benefit from our rental car incumbent operators that they report monthly operating statistics. The story they're telling is that on a gross basis from April to October of 2022, each rental car medallion assigned to an airport operator generated approximately $15,000. By 2023, for the same period, that value declined to $13,500. By that same basis, a medallion is worth 59 rental days as opposed to 71 rental days previously. And if you take a national basis, an average rental car contract is 4.5, 4 3/4 days. Each medallion is now worth 12 customers to one of my incumbents instead of 15 customers. I've informally spoken to my incumbents. Two of them appear to be strongly against an increase in the medallion cap, with the third conversation still outstanding. The Airport Commission has not directed me to a position on Article G or the medallion cap. However, I do feel obligated to express my concerns for the continued viability of my incumbent rental car operators. While airport revenue is a consideration, more important to me is their continued viability as a traditional brick and mortar business operating in the terminal and providing a high level of customer service and basically being my teammate in the airport's mission to provide safe and efficient passenger experience. From my position, respectfully, the town bylaws support an efficient and dependable business operating environment. Following the select board recognition from the September meeting that Turo is not compliant with the town bylaw. Again, that's my words or my summary. The airport issued a cease and desist letter to Turo effective December 1st for the airport. I wanted to recognize and thank the select board for their clarity on the issue as it allowed the airport to work in a supportive manner to address its own operations under its own control. And again, I'm not here before you to offer any policy solutions or comments on G at this time, though that may change in the future. The next Airport Commission meeting is on Tuesday of next week. And just that the airport is committed to keep working with town administration. I'm available to answer any questions you might have either now or at a later time through Ms. Gibson. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else we want to talk about on that tonight? Any questions for the airport? Okay. Next.
Well, maybe a question. Here's one about the San Francisco. They were not called rental car companies. Were they allowed to just pick up whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted? Or did they end up having in LA and San Francisco? Did they end up having to pay? I guess this is for Brian Riley.
I believe they, similar to what happened at Logan Airport, I believe Turo and the airport did come with a contract basically between them as far as how these cars were going to be, allowed to be dropped off and picked up. The issue which we tried to see if there was other places in the country where this had been answered, and this was the only one we found where the court said, Turo is claiming we're not even a car rental agency, so we're not, you can't put us in the same boat as Avis and Hertz and et cetera. And the court said under California law, it found that Turo was not, in fact, a car rental agency. I don't know. I don't know what their law says on that subject. And there is one statute which really has more to do with insurance in Massachusetts about car rental agencies, and it's the definition is pretty similar, I'd say, to what the bylaw has here.
Yeah, no, and the reason I asked the question is they're bound by the same rules as the rental car companies are bound by, even if they're not called a company. And I think we should be tightening our rules so that they are bound by the same rules. Yeah, that's sort of my take on it. Thank you.
Yep, understood.
Okay. Next item.
Erica, can you please put the outline back up? Okay, so that was rental cars. Short-term rentals, you all had some discussion about this at your November 15th meeting. There may have been, and there was a little bit more discussion, I think, last week about the community impact fee and who it applies to, how it can be delayed. And I think, Brian, have we settled on that?
Well, it does. I'll tell you where I think we are. And that is that, it applies. Again, too many papers here. What was adopted by the town, there were two options and the town adopted the first one, which was, someone who has two or more rental units and they are not within the same, they're not within the same building where the owner resides. The other choice would include something where the owner resides. So apparently someone who only has one unit, the impact fee would not apply to them. The residential tax would, but not this impact fee. And someone who has, let's say, rents out a room in their house, the impact fee would not apply to that. So it's somebody who has two or more and they're not within where the owner lives. In terms of, and I don't know if you want to go on to what we talked about as when this might take effect.
Yes, and then we have one question from the
Okay.
audience.
So I tried to talk to somebody at DOR to get a firm answer and did not have much luck. But the way I understand their regulations and what they have on their website and what they seem to have as more of a policy is DOR would like to hear from a town that adopts this impact fee basically as soon as they do so. But if they receive that formal notice from the town, and it's more than 30 days before the next fiscal quarter begins, it kicks in on that fiscal quarter. In other words, DOR is going to know that the owner of these properties is going to be responsible for paying along the impact fee. If it's received less than 30 days before the next fiscal quarter, it doesn't kick in until the fiscal quarter after that. So it's, January, April, July, or October 1st. And so we discussed, well, what happens if we don't file notice that this acceptance has happened until, let's say, first week of June? Would that simply mean it wouldn't take effect until October 1? That makes sense to me. There's nothing in the statute or the regulations that says, well, if you don't give us the notice in time, then you have to vote town meeting vote again. And that really wouldn't make sense to me based on any other local acceptance statute I've seen. So that might be one approach if we want to push off when this impact fee would take effect. The other option would be to have, which we talked about, would be to have an article on the upcoming annual warrant to amend the vote that was taken this past November and select a date when we want it to take effect. So it's kind of the same place that I was last week, but I believe that either one of those options is an appropriate way to do it. And I guess as a practical matter, I thought perhaps the second warrant article in the spring might be appreciated by these property owners. Is that way, if that passes, then they know for sure when they're going to be responsible for this impact fee and they could start factoring it into their rental agreements.
Matt?
So see if I understand this. So if we tonight voted to send this in September, September 15th or 30 days, we could have it start in December. Or do we have to send it in November to have it start in December? Or
it would,
so
whenever you,
if I wanted to start, when do we send it then? This is why I was asking, because I'm all confused. If I wanted to start January 1 of, we're in 25, when do I send it?
So the beginning of the fiscal quarter is October 1 of 24. And so if it was submitted anytime after September 1st, it wouldn't take effect till the following quarter, which would be January 1 of 25. That's the math.
All right. So if we voted that date as a board, then we would be giving notice and it wouldn't happen until a year after this year.
Well, the notice, at least my understanding, the notice that DOR relies on is this, they have a form that the town clerk is supposed to submit showing that town meeting voted to accept this statute. And either it doesn't say when it takes effect and they just do it by the 30 days in the next quarter, or it states a date that the town wanted it to take effect, in which case they would look to that.
Brooke?
So I think for the first decision we need to make is, when is the appropriate time to make this effective? What is the date, and how do we work backwards from that? So in my mind, I feel like I would rather have it become effective October 1st, the beginning of that quarter. I think the intention of the voters was to generate this revenue for housing and infrastructure as designated in the law. I would favor October 1st. It's sort of it's the end of this, after the summer season's over. And I think if we were to make that decision today to file at a point in time, which is within 30 days of the beginning of June 5th, of the July quarter starting, then we could, if we were to make that decision today, then we could explain to people that you are responsible for this impact fee beginning October, any rentals that begin October 1st. I don't know
That's
how many
right.
contracts are executed now for fall rentals, but probably not a ton.
Not
So I-
as
so I-
not as many as it would
Right.
be in season by any means. And I think that would be fair. I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah.
We talked about January, but then we talked about October as well. But are we able to ask the town clerk to hold off
Yeah.
on sending the notice in? Okay, I just want to make sure we have the authority to do
Well,
that.
I would want something perhaps in writing from town council that indicates that we can do it like this. So I think what we're, is this correct, Brian? We would prefer, I think, not to have a warrant article at any more town meetings about this. We would prefer to be able to, at, I think, the board's discretion, authorize the town clerk to send the notification to the state in at whatever date would cause the implementation of the fee to be, let's just say, October 1st, 2024. Do you, is that
Right.
going to work?
I will put that in writing, and based on what DOR says, that would be anytime from June 1st on. That would make it take effect on October 1st of 24.
I mean, I feel like that's enough time to do the proper outreach and notice to people. personally.
So that's another question that came up. How do people know about this? Does the state let them know? Are we supposed to let them know? We don't even know who some of these people are.
Yeah, well, it's
Right.
applies to is the tricky part.
Well,
Definitively.
I think we've heard that it applies to whoever it pays the fee,
Two or
the
more.
rental fee.
2 or more.
Yeah, I mean, the town previously accepted Section 3A of this statute, was sort of the general rental, room occupancy tax, I guess it's called. And so DOR knows who's supposed to be paying that, and they pay it, and the town gets a portion of it back. So this is a new one. It's not going to apply to everyone who's been paying that room occupancy tax, just a designated number. But I mean, I have to assume that these property owners have to tell DOR what kind of properties they have, how many, and where they are.
DOR determines that.
And so DOR, they'll know who's supposed to be paying that tax.
Campbell Sutton has a question. Campbell?
Hi, thank you. I got through?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yay. Okay, super. So thanks for recognizing me. I just had a couple of I don't know, questiony thoughts. I thought that Article 3, in my understanding of it, applied to professionally managed properties or short-term rentals. And so it sounded to me
That's
like,
correct. There's some nuances to how that's defined.
right. So then that sounded to me like if you rent your property through a local real estate agent, let's say, or you don't have it just with one, you have it with multiple, that becomes professionally managed, I think. I wasn't quite I'm trying to assume that it applies to like the platform rentals as well. And then with that, I understand what the town council just said, that DOR will know who needs to pay. But I'm sort of wondering how the owner knows. Is it going to be the real estate company that's adding this in? And backing up a little bit, I did have this one question, since Article 1 did not pass, and Article 1 had a list of definitions within it in which operators were defined. If Article 1 didn't pass and we don't actually have a definition for professionally managed properties, is this even a article, or if
No,
Article 3 can work?
This is something the state instituted that was something that we could opt into. So we voted to opt in, and
Okay.
not necessarily whether something's rented through a real estate company. It's about whether they have more than one property. There's a few different things that apply. Tom, do you want
Okay, so just for example, if you only have one property that you short-term rent, whether it's through realtors or platforms or like that, does this tax not apply then? Or does it have to do with your year-round occupancy or something like that?
I can try to address that, Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. You're correct that this community impact fee, so-called, only applies to transfers of occupancy for professionally managed units, but that statute, which was accepted by town meeting, does define it as, it says a professionally managed unit is one of two or more short-term rental units in the same town, operated by the same operator/owner, and the unit that would be subject to the fee is not within the same dwelling that includes the owner's residence. So if someone owns one unit that's not in their house and rents it out, the regular room occupancy tax will apply to that, but not this new impact fee.
Okay, super. Well, thank you for that, because I think that's really going to be important for a lot of the local people that are renting, a unit or within their home or garage apartment or what have you on a short-term basis. So I appreciate your time and responses. Thank you.
That's why it doesn't apply to them, and it will fall somehow within the platforms and the real estate agencies to sort of identify how this is going to be managed, because there will now be a difference between what some houses are paying and what others are paying, which there already is, because there's the 2-week exemption where you don't pay at all, or the over 31-day exemption where you don't pay at all. So but anyway,
it's very weedy.
it is a little bit. Tom?
Madam Chair, through you to Ms. Sutton, in our packet for today is Attorney Riley's memo, which lays all this out in great detail. It's excellent.
Okay, thank you.
And also, Madam Chair, I also understand, and Attorney Riley, please correct me, but long-term rentals have a completely different set of tenant laws, which don't apply. That's why the Commonwealth decided to do a short-term rental, their own law in 2019.
That's right. This community impact fee, which just got accepted last month, only applies to short-term rentals as that is defined in the statute.
Thank you.
Yeah, my
Anything
final
more?
comment, I'd be happy with October or January. I think of the years in calendar years. So that's why I was pushing it out to just understand it. But if the board wants to do it in October, that's fine too. And I would love to at some point soon vote and be done with this. Yeah.
I mean, I think we should move forward. Tom, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we authorize the town clerk to send the appropriate documentation to DOR after June, anytime after in the month of June for an effective date in the following quarter, meaning
Beginning
October.
October 1 with the written opinion from town council.
Yes.
Yes. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
So the board might, I guess, maybe still want to discuss at some point whether or not it wants to have any of its own short-term rental articles. So I think you might be still thinking about that. Home rule petitions. I forget if I had highlighted this last week, but the Community Housing Bank is going to need to be revoted with some additional language changes, which I am awaiting. Coastal resiliency districts, we are still awaiting a draft from town council, as well as the parameter of betterments. Still waiting on the year-round housing deed restriction program from Affordable Housing Trust. The salary for the board members is still under review. And that is everything that was new from last week. So I'll do this again next week with anything else new or updated. And I think we were going to have town council review the legal triage, as we have been calling it, of the citizen warrant articles, which is basically more or less a review of, is it legal? Is it not totally legal, but it could be legal with a motion that amends it to be legal, or is it simply not legal or just not non-binding? So I think Brian's prepared to go through the articles and maybe answer any questions from the board, but there is a finance committee public hearing again next Thursday, the 14th at 4. It's online, remote, where town council will be there reviewing these with the citizens and the committee. So Brian, I think
Okay.
maybe just take the board through.
Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, most of you have been through these before, very similar. I mean, nothing really struck me as where an entire petition was just, illegal. But there were a handful where I've stated that it would be a non-binding vote for one reason or another. And there are a number of zoning changes, whether it's to the text within the zoning bylaw or a change to the zoning map where a parcel or two gets changed from one district to another. All of those, that's really the planning board's purview to figure out whether they like it or whether it's valid. And we would certainly work with the planning board when they hold a hearing. But since these were all properly petitioned to the board, really they need to be referred to the planning board so they can start figuring out when they're going to hold these public hearings. So if you like, I'll just go through them alphabetically. So Article A, that is a zoning map change, just changing two parcels from one district to another. So again, that's fine. The planning board needs to hold a hearing and then make a recommendation at a town meeting on it. Same with Article B. The Article C was also, oh no, I'm sorry, it's intended to be part of a yard sale transaction. That one, I did comment that it's not in proper form. The description, and Vicky Marsh in my office looked at this. The description certainly isn't is not sufficiently definite to tell exactly what parcel or what part of a parcel it is. And a plan wasn't provided. There was an assessor's map, but that's really not enough. But then subsequent to are starting to go through here, the Planning and Economic Development located a plan that would do the job for town meeting. And so Article C here, so that can be kind of fixed on in the motion at the town meeting. So that's the acquisition part for a yard sale transaction. Article D is the same parcel, which would then authorize conveyance through the yard sale program. Article E concerns, it says, oh, I'm sorry. Article E concerned, you wanted to prevent any town funds from being used regarding Surfside Crossing. My opinion was that would be non-binding. A simple vote, it's sort of a, sense of the meeting vote, really, a resolution. And that if this was something the Affordable Housing Trust already had funds for, they don't need a new town meeting vote. And if the Affordable Housing Trust comes before a town meeting looking for additional bonding authority regarding Surfside Crossing, obviously that town meeting gets to vote on that. But if town meeting votes to give that bonding authority, it doesn't really matter what happens on this particular Article E because it would be non-binding.
Can I ask a question? Just so, and this is more in the under the premise of you can't bind the board to a future vote, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And really, you can't really bind town meeting from ever taking up something on the subject again either.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's right. Article F is proposing some amendments to the charter in section 4 concerning, where department heads, who they report to and who appoints them. So there may be plenty of discussion over this, but in terms of is the petition in proper form, it is. It's seeking to authorize the select board to file a petition for a special act of the legislature amending a few different sections of the town charter. So that can proceed. Article G, we've already referenced, that is.
Brian,
Sorry.
Is that an authority we already have?
Well, no, actually. It's typical. It's typically that the legislature, before they start working on a special act, they want to see that it has a town meeting vote behind it, to just like this, to authorize the select board to kind of administratively get it filed up in the general court, but it does need a town meeting vote to authorize that.
Okay, thank you.
So
Okay.
I have the same question from a different perspective. So it says you underlined it. It says it seeks to authorize the select board. So you've underlined authorize. So if this request was to send it up to is that because it has to? Do you see what I'm saying? Does it have to authorize so that the state isn't given a bunch of requests that are not strongly supported by their communities? Is that why that it's underlined? I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, well, yeah, partly that, and partly that, as we mentioned a minute ago, in general, town meeting cannot compel the select board to do something. So, hypothetically, I'm not saying the board would do this if it passed, but hypothetically, the board could decide it doesn't support these charter amendments and not refer it up to the general court. And this form, which the petitioner actually used, is what's recommended by House and Senate council there, get a vote of town meeting to authorize the select board to file it. But it's not, I only underlined it to point out that it's not to mandate that the select board file this.
And I think we plan to talk about this sort of in general at a future at a future board meeting. Anyway, I think the policy, I look at this as, you know, do we want now non-town employees as department heads? And, you know, how do we align, you know, the town with the, you know, non-town? So it's sort of, there's issues that have arisen, you know, so that from this. So I think, you know, it's something for us as a board to discuss. Whether we agree with F, whether we agree with that or not, I think there are issues that have arisen recently that would cause us to talk about this.
Also, Madam Chair, I would just quickly add that the Town Council Study Committee has started meeting, and in discussion, and that I have no idea what will come out of it, but in discussion of that is the charter in general. So that might be a vehicle for members of the public to voice any concerns or to go to.
Thank you.
Okay, Article G, we mentioned a little while ago. This would make some changes to the Chapter 58, the car rental agency bylaw. I found, you know, what they're proposing to generally be valid. I said it wasn't in proper form because it's in kind of bullet points rather than in the form of the bylaw. But that could certainly be cured on a motion as well. I made a couple of comments just on the wording, nothing major, including they're proposing that if a license or a medallion is not used for 2 years, that it's automatically canceled. I think the Attorney General would say you can't do that with a license that has to do with someone's livelihood. You need to at least give them a hearing before you take action. But other than that, it can certainly go forward. Article H is zoning bylaw, middle income inclusionary housing. I can't talk terribly intelligently on this whole subject, but we did review it and found it generally raised some questions, but nothing that can't be handled at the planning board hearing. It certainly isn't good enough shape to proceed down that road. Article I is would be non-binding again. It just is seeking to authorize the select board to appoint a landfill committee. It's not proposing a bylaw or anything, so that would be a non-binding vote. Article J, you may know more of the background on this one than I do, but it seemed to be asking the town for assistance on an eviction matter between an owner of private property and a tenant. That is a legal dispute between those two parties. It's not something the town can get involved with. And to the extent this is looking for town funds to be used to try to resolve this dispute, the anti-aid amendment, just in very brief form, says you can't spend public funds to benefit, one individual or a very small group of individuals if there's no larger public benefit attached to it. It would be non-binding in any event. Article K, there's a state family and medical leave statute. This is proposing that the town accept that. It's in proper form. I was told by David Jenkins, who you all know, that even if it's adopted, there would still have to be negotiation with town unions and employees over whether that would be implemented or not. And to the extent it was going to be funded, obviously that requires appropriation as well.
I have a question. While we're on that, is it not state law now for town employees, or is it is it only, businesses with over 6 employees or something?
It's the federal FMLA is certainly applies. This one this is a sort of a state form of it, but it requires that it be accepted by the town meeting or by a city before it takes effect.
I guess, are towns exempted? I guess, is this something that towns are doing? Do any towns do it? Is this exempted because you're under something else, or what's the?
We're still doing some research on that. Very few towns, maybe one or two in Massachusetts have adopted this, but we're looking into it
Yeah, to see who's done it and
how they've done it and what sort of appropriations they've put forward.
and what rules we have rules already for medical leave.
We have family medical leave, yes.
So would this be,
provisions
we
that
have to
are
look, is
federal.
this additional or is this?
This would be complementary, concurrent. I believe.
Concurrent, so if
Yeah.
one, same time, different time.
I'm not sure you mean by same.
Was it like, so if the town is already giving 30 days and this gives 90, is it a total of 90 or does it become 120?
Oh, Matt, I am not prepared to get into that level of detail right now.
All right,
on it.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
wondering why
yeah.
it's there. I had
Yeah.
one of my employees a couple years ago was probably one of the first under the state's rules to take it, a few years ago. And it was complicated. Terry understands it. I don't very well, but anyway.
Okay, so Article L, another zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit pools or hot tubs in a particular district. The article's in proper form. Obviously, it needs to get referred to the planning board for their hearing and recommendation to town meeting and 2/3 vote to be approved at town meeting. Article M is the first of the three proposed short-term rental bylaw amendments. I reviewed them. I mean, nothing jumped out at me as being improper or illegal. So I said it's in proper form. This particular one is a general bylaw, so that's a majority vote at town meeting. Article N, that's the adding a couple of parcels to the sewer district. You're familiar with those. It's in proper form. It requires either a 2/3 vote or a majority vote, depending on what this board position on it is. Article O would amend the bylaw that has the stretch energy code by rescinding the town's acceptance on the stretch energy code. I found this to be in proper legal form. The town adopted the stretch energy code in 2019, so it's been more than 3 years. So this vote can happen. Just as an aside, I added that, I do believe that the town is a green community and there are various steps you have to do to be accepted by the Commonwealth as a green community. One of them is adopting the stretch energy code. I don't know that this would automatically impact that designation, but I just raised it as a potential issue. Although this is another revisions to the short-term rental bylaw, relatively similar to the previous one. This is a general bylaw, so that would be a majority vote. And then Q, sort of a companion to P, would amend the use table in the zoning bylaw concerning short and long-term rentals. So that needs to get referred to the planning board for their hearing and report. And that's 2/3 vote at town meeting.
The question on that one, did you examine whether that is similar to Article 61 that was voted down? Both of them include the words, which includes rental of dwelling units or parts thereof. They both defined it the same way, and that seems to be the main, the main purpose, even though there's more definitions on this year's version. Did you consider that part of it?
So that was last spring?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't specifically review that, but I can and pass that along. We can pass that along for the planning board's consideration too.
Right. Yeah, I think we should double check that because I've had some people have approached me and said it's basically the same article that was voted down that Linda did a couple years ago. So it's probably, so anyway, make sure.
Article 61. Okay.
Fight on town meeting floor.
Well, right. Understood. Article R, again, this is just a change to the zoning map for a parcel from one district to another. I did say this one is not in proper form because if you see what's attached to the petition, it's sort of a hand-drawn line. There isn't any meets and bounds description, which kind of nails down exactly what parcel we're talking about. It doesn't even exactly know what the square footage is. However, it was filed as a petition to amend the zoning map. So I recommend that it be passed along to the planning board for their hearing. And that issue will certainly be front and center for the planning board on that. It may be that the petitioner can work with the planning board to fix that so it could be voted as a motion, but it does need to go to the planning board at this point. And Article S, same thing, except this one is in
Hold
proper
on,
form.
Brian. Brooke has a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Brian, I believe a zoning change on this property was brought before town meeting recently as well. It may be a repeat. You might want to check.
Okay, well, if that is true, what the statute says is that if a zoning amendment is defeated at a town meeting, the exact same one can't come back within 2 years unless the planning board votes in favor of it. In other words, the planning board recommends approval to town meeting.
Okay.
So if that's the case, again, the planning board will have to look at that, because if the planning board is not willing to recommend it, then really town meeting shouldn't even be voting on it. So I can double check that one too, and we'll make sure the planning board is aware of that. You think it was within the last couple of years?
I'm trying to remember whether it was 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember.
Okay. Okay, we can double check that. Okay. So S, the zoning map change. This one is in proper form. Needs to go to the planning board. T is calling for an independent investigation of the 2018 incident at the African Meeting House. And so I've noted that there's nothing wrong with the form here. This can be voted at town meeting, but it would be a non-binding vote. Again, town meeting really can't compel town officials to take some certain action or to expend funds. This is looking for an independent investigation to be funded by the town. But even if the money is appropriated, the select board or administration are not mandated to see that it gets spent. And the article, I also noted that the article says anyway that the article sponsors would oversee this investigation. In other words, private residents would oversee this investigation funded by public funds. Again, that would be a benefit to these sponsors. And I think that would be I think that might be an illegal use of public funds. But in both.
Sorry, what is the anti-aid amendment?
That is, as I mentioned it on one of the earlier ones. It's, I won't quote it for you, but basically what it says is that you can't spend public funds that only benefit a private individual or very small group of individuals without a broader public benefit. And so I don't know for a fact that this would be an illegal expenditure, but it crossed my mind in seeing what the subject matter was. But basically it's I found it to be a non-binding vote. Article U.
Balls for Bakers then.
Article U is another sewer district map request. So the select board will need to consider that before town meeting. Articles V and W approved as to form. This is another yard sale program. V is the acquisition, W is the sale. It did note that I guess the typical procedure is to have a copy of a plan filed with the town clerk, and that wasn't done, but that could certainly be done between now and town meeting. And it refers to Board of Selectmen, so the motion should probably refer to Select Board. So that's V and W. Article X wants the town to withdraw from the Good Neighbor Agreement with Vineyard Wind. This can be voted, but it would be a non-binding vote, because again, the town executive board took that action, and town meeting cannot compel that to be undone. My comments are similar with the Article Y. Offshore wind power require a town meeting vote. If there's something that the select board or town administration are already authorized to do, you can't require to go to town meeting for a vote before that happens. And mandating a future town meeting to take something is I just found it to be non-binding. Articles Z and AA. This is again this is the third yard sale transaction. I had the same comments as the last one. There should be a recording plan on file with the town clerk so people can see it, and it should say Select Board when the motion is made. Article BB, zoning bylaw change concerning greenhouses as being folded into the ground cover section of the zoning bylaw. This is in proper form, just like all the others, needs to be referred now to the planning board for their hearing and recommendation. And Article CC, the last one, this is another zoning map change. So the form is fine, needs to go to the planning board. And that was our first pass through these.
Any other questions?
Just quick comment back on G is I hope that some of the discussions that happen at G is the Turo licensing, and they've got some good ideas in there, I have to admit. But who is responsible? What parties in the town are going to do it? I hope that stuff is sort of sussed out at the, sort of at the FinCom level or the town level, because there's a lot of responsibilities that would be put on somebody. So it would be important to know who's going to do that, who's going to track it, how are they going to track it, that kind of thing. But I do think it was interesting.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
Brian, through the chair to you, for the zoning articles, can you comment, or is there any comment on how the housing choice 50% threshold, maybe not for each of the articles, but in general, is that in your notes, in your thinking in all these, or is that something that is dealt with at the planning board level to be considered and shaken out later?
Yeah, I didn't try to make those kind of judgment calls here. I think that is something that needs to be developed at the planning board hearing, where they can decide whether this would be valid or not.
Got it. Thank you. Just curious because I probably will get asked. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything else on town meeting to be continued? Any committee reports? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Deanne Atherton.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Deanne.
Just a question, please. In regard to the citizen articles, do we have a requirement that in terms of transparency and full disclosure, that the citizens who are bringing an article forward should disclose whether they are being paid by someone to do that or not?
I can address that, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the petition warrant articles are actually governed by state law, and it's a pretty low threshold in order to require a article to be included on the annual town meeting. It only requires signatures of at least 10 registered voters in town. For a special town meeting, it's 100 signatures. But but it's that kind of, that kind of requirement would not be found legal by the Attorney General. And you don't have anything like that on your regulations now.
But I think the question is, does say if a lawyer brings a article to town meeting, they will disclose, I'm an attorney, I'm bringing this article, but at town meeting they will.
Okay, no,
That's file, but at town meeting they'll do it. But I think what Deanna is talking about is an interesting question, because do we expect the same level of disclosure from individuals to do it? Or what if an attorney brings something but doesn't disclose it? I mean, I think what she's asking for is reasonable, to say, hey, I'm doing this for this reason, but it sounds like we can't require it at town meeting even, or could that be something the moderator could ask of the, of the body?
I would have to say no, because, again, the statute simply says if you get enough signatures, your article goes on. And whether you're doing it because, well, if I'm the proponent of the article and I get my signatures and I get up and talk at town meeting, I'd say the moderator or nobody else can ask me, well, how much money are you going to make off of this? Or, it's the conflict of interest law, for example, doesn't apply to someone speaking as a voter. So no, I don't think that's something that could be required.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead. You have a follow-up.
Yes, I've been attending 30 years of town meeting, and I think the practice has been that the citizen sponsor of articles has disclosed on the floor of town meeting whether or not they have been engaged to sponsor that article. So I hope that we can do some further study of this issue, because I think it's very pertinent and will really help the voters in understanding sort of the genesis of these citizen articles. And if indeed that has been the practice, then it would be helpful early in the process at this point to know whether citizens have been engaged for financial remuneration to bring these articles forward to town meeting. And I would hope the board would consider, again, in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, to consider this. Thank you.
Brooke, go ahead.
I believe town council just advised us that it is not within our purview to do so because the state law prevails over this matter.
Right.
So to me, it's not an issue we can do anything about, according to the opinion we just got from town council.
Yeah, I think if I may, with regard to what Mr. Fee said originally, if some petitioners hire an attorney and they want the attorney to go on town meeting floor and speak for them, typically the attorney is going to say, or maybe it's obvious, I've been hired by these petitioners to kind of make their case to town meeting. But I haven't seen it where someone has been required to say either, when they're a voter, they're the proponent and they've signed the petition, that they're required to say whether they're speaking for somebody else or that they've been hired to present this. I don't know. I just haven't observed it myself.
Madam Chair,
Libby,
I think we're
yes.
talking about two different things here. Citizens who sign a citizen petition do not have to disclose anything. What is part of our town code, chapter 44, section 7.1, entitled Disclosure of Employment. Any person who is employed by another person regarding any matter under discussion at a meeting shall disclose the fact of his or her employment before speaking thereon. That is the bylaw that I believe is being referred to. That is about speaking on something at town meeting, not about submitting a warrant article.
So you can submit it and you can stay quiet but if you speak about it, you should disclose. That makes sense.
Well, I mean, most likely through this whole process, all of these articles are being vetted by FinCom. And then they have to be presented at town meeting with a speech generally.
Yeah.
And I think that in practical matters, it comes out what people's motivation is for bringing the article forth, whether it's a zoning change that affects their own property, whether they're working for an organization that's trying to further this. And ultimately you need a vote, you need a vote of a majority or a 2/3 of town meeting to pass anything. So I don't know.
And
I
that's
mean,
why people
I
are
think it all
encouraged to
flushes
attend
itself out
FinCom
generally.
and planning board hearings so
Yeah.
they can hear the people speak on them.
Yes, exactly. Campbell Sutton.
Hi, thank you for hearing me again. I was just thinking as you folks were talking about this, I think the concern comes from sort of, well, backdoor probably isn't the correct word, but where non-voting taxpayers may be soliciting people, not always lawyers, to present citizen petitions. So in a way, it's a way to get your desires in front of the town without actually being a voter in the town. Do you see what I mean there?
Yes, 100%, but that can happen, but you still need to get signatures of registered voters, which I actually think the threshold of that should be higher, but it still comes out and it still has to be voted on with robust discussion. Brooke.
And I don't mean to dismiss the concerns or the underlying reasons why folks are asking the question, but the bottom line is we don't have the authority to do what's being asked, which is limit any registered voter on Nantucket from putting forth a citizen warrant article on anyone's behalf. It seems clear to me that the state law is quite permissive on this, and we're subject to it, whether we like it or not.
Okay. I think we've got a pretty clear answer from council on that. So committee reports? Nothing tonight? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously.
See you in the morning.
So you have some things to sign still.
There's some things over here.
The community, yeah.